All right, we are live. Welcome to the Baseline General Assembly.
Cool. Yeah. So we'll go through our usual monthly General Assembly updates where all of our different teams will give updates on the work going on and what's to come. We'll get updates from outreach, research, core devs, the TSC. We'll talk about the roadmap items, the interop event and use case, and then we'll have an open floor and see if there are any other updates or conversation points from anyone in the call. So to kick us off, Mark Haddle, can you tell us what's going on in the outreach team?
Yeah, right now we have already had our third blog of the year that was released last week, early last week. And this was the one that my time was up, so I wound up writing this one. The biggest thing that the blog really worked on was, all the different approaches to multi-party data sharing, because there's so many manual processes and ad hoc solutions that are really kind of cobbled together in various different ways. There's not really a unified solution that can deal with the problems when it comes to, pardon me for a second, I get my cat down. How to sit there and do multi-party coordination and data sharing in environments that you can, either because of data privacy or just a competitive position. And you need to share people that are going to share data that may extend beyond your corporate borders. So the different approaches that have been done, I delineated in the blog post, looking at EDI, which has been around for 40, almost 50 years, and it pretty much remains the accepted de facto way of sharing data objects right now. But EDI and also you have value-added networks within EDI, which is like a cluster of EDI. When you start getting into a multi-party environment, the thing is EDI is a little bit costly to set up, maintain, and again, it's old technology, but it works. But you still have a lot of the limitations that, what happens if you have people that don't have the constant updating of the data sets and it isn't put through the EDI. That's why, blockchain really emerged, and the two flavors of blockchain that I talk about in the article, public blockchains as well as private permission blockchains. We talk about the advantages and of course the trade-offs and the limitations when it comes to each one of those. There isn't really one that is emerging out front right now, just depending on a use case. There's many different approaches, and still just really trying to figure out how the technology is going to really kind of mature. So we also looked at, there's a couple of other solutions that are working out that are managed services, where you are cloning and moving your data to a common repository that has encryption and the permissioned aspect of it. Entirely cloud-based, and generally this involves forcing your data into a shared architecture. You're giving up custody and control. And I've got governance questions when it comes to these new approaches that are coming out, as far as who owns the network, what happens with dispute resolution, who has the final say. And looking at all of those shortcomings, we talked about how Baseline really does not suffer from the same design problems that a lot of these other solutions have, where you're not cloning and moving data. Giving up custody and control. It stays in your data stays in each system of record. It's a lot easier to secure data at rest than data in motion. And this is what we wanted to have people take a look at the Baseline protocol, because it's a far easier to implement, isn't going to require a lot of displacement of the assets. You're not going to be asked to give up your ERP system or your CRM system. You're using what you have right now. You're coordinating this internally, but also across your corporate borders. So that's what we really showcase within within this month's blog post. So coming up next, we've got another one. I believe Yoav has this one, and it's all about how being a core dev. within the baseline protocol. And it's really exciting. A lot of the stuff, I didn't know a lot of the stuff that you guys actually did sometimes. And I pay attention. So this was actually really cool, but that's what I've got going on from the outreach.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that. And looking forward to that blog. I think we'll plan to publish that today or tomorrow. And that was a great next topic, Yoav, just because, like Mark said, you have to be in the community to know how things work, just because there's a lot of moving parts, but it isn't too hard. So if we just have resources that exist that make it a little easier for onboarding, that'll help us continuously grow. Also with that, we have a few events coming up. We have events in Austin taking place next week with ETH Austin and Consensus by CoinDesk. We don't have a baseline focused event, or none of our major involved organizations are doing anything, because we did some stuff at ETH Austin, ETH Denver, but I think we will be on ground. Our Mesh R&D team will be there. I think some other community members from EY and the others will be around, as well as the EEA. So we will meet in person, try to get some stuff done where we can. And then our Mesh R&D team is going to be presenting at the Hyperledger booth on next Wednesday. We have the last slot where we'll be talking about the ZKVM. And also there will definitely be mentions of baseline. So that will be a little unique opportunity for us to share with those in the Linux Foundation ecosystem, as well as those interested in learning about baseline. So also from the outreach team, we do have our outreach RFPs that are at the final stage. We just need to wrap them up and get them posted. I think that's on the list for the next day or two. So Mark, as our outreach chair, mapped out the roadmap items on that are relevant to outreach. So what the large events for the year will look like, and what types of resources are needed to support that. So we'll share more on that next time. All right. So Mark, would you like to tell us what's going on in the research group?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So right now in the research work group, we're about halfway through all of the user stories that we're creating for this zero trust, zero knowledge international supply chain. And that's really all to say about the update. We hope that everybody is enjoying the content so far, who's paying attention to the materials that we're creating. And I also hope that if there's anybody who's interested in joining the work group sessions, that they do. And that I just want to add that these sessions are great for anybody who's interested in understanding a little bit more about how baseline protocol works, how you can create ZK chains, and if there's anybody with relevant business experience who can make user stories and create requirements that are helpful for developers who want to build new use cases using the baseline protocol, please join the working group.
All right, thank you. Yoav, for core dev updates, please.
All right, yes, thank you. So core dev updates are mainly going to encompass the SRI, BRI3 work group, and kind of where that's progressed since the last time we've given an update. So currently the SRI is on milestone 4. The team has kind of gone through and discussed all of the necessary components that milestone 4 would encompass, and have opened relevant issues in the GitHub repo that kind of cover those different components. The major focus of milestone 4 is the ZKP components, as well as kind of finalizing the use case that the actual implementation itself would be going through. So there are several open issues, like I just mentioned, that are kind of relevant to the milestone 4. Things like Merkle proof in the ZK circuit, state object CRUDs, happy case end-to-end testing, mocking Prisma, Merkle tree CRUD, things like this, things that kind of involve the the overall objective of milestone 4. There are some PRs that have kind of been open. There are, I believe, 3 or 4 that are all related to one of the open issues. They've got a couple comments and discussions and back and forth on the implementation of them, but should sort of be updated and reviewed fairly soon. And those PRs are accomplishing the ZKP component that connects to the blockchain itself, and the ZKP component signature edition, as well as the Merkle tree CRUD and the mock Prisma client, which will kind of remove the need for mocking the transaction storage agent, which kind of involves a lot of overhead and redundant code on the side of the developer. So removing that need and mocking the client itself is kind of a big plus for the development experience itself. So other than the ZKP components and all of those issues and PRs, a major piece of this milestone, like I said, is the use case itself. So alongside all of the actual development time being spent, a lot of time has gone into discussing what kind of use case we want to go forward with, whether it be something real world, something that's actually going to be implementable immediately, or whether it be something that's kind of more in line with reference material, more mock style data. And we decided on, or the current, I should say, the current documentation that's kind of been prepared and everybody is looking at the proposal itself has been decided on to be something incredibly simple and straightforward, kind of without going into too much complexity, which is kind of the overall design architecture of the SRI, to kind of be as simple and easy to understand as possible, to become sort of the starting point, the base layer of an implementation, to be able to just take this and then add on top of it, a new custom implementation, something more novel. So the current proposed use case is to have 2 counterparties acting as individuals in a buyer-seller style relationship, something that's kind of ubiquitous and easy to understand. Things like this are often brought up when example use cases are needed. So these 2 counterparties would agree to utilize a BPI and synchronize their systems of record, which would ultimately synchronize their invoicing processes. And so there is a document, maybe we can share, I'm not so sure, but it goes through the details of how this use case would be implemented, kind of utilizing the current framework of where the SRI is now. It's still quite early stages. The team is providing a lot of feedback back and forth and discussing it, and trying to decide if it's kind of exactly what we want to go with or if it needs to be tweaked. But this is something that is discussed in our weekly calls every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, for anybody who's interested in joining in and kind of either listening in or providing feedback as to what they think is more appropriate. So that's kind of where the SRI is at. Keith, unless you have anything to add there.
Nothing besides the fact that the current work that you're always talking on, the SRI use case walkthrough document, although it describes a simplified avenue for which milestone 4 could possibly take, that it's not necessarily a representation of what the use case, the implemented use case, will actually be within the BPI, but more of a way for the team to align on the concepts and the largely the path that will be traveled in whatever use case is finally decided decided in synchronizing their states and so on and so forth. So it's good to keep that in mind. If you look at that document, it's aimed at bringing an understanding to the underlying functionality that's going to be implemented in milestone 4, not necessarily the use case exactly. That's it.
Ready? Thank you.
Cool. Andreas, over to you for standards updates.
Absolutely. So we are or were in an interesting situation because the communities projects requirements for a standard listed that a must requirement around including testability statements without defining testability. Note, W3C has spent the better part of 3 decades trying to define testability that everybody can accept. Needless to say that their efforts to define this in a unanimous manner have been utterly unsuccessful. Just as a side note. However, we're a little bit more pragmatic. So we tried things out and iterated towards a more practical definition of testability, which I think after much work and iterations and complaints and it's like facetiousness going back and forth between all interested parties, primarily from me because I'm a facetious person, came to the conclusion that these testability statements, in order to be useful for implementers, should be a human readable test, a logical test. I can share an example, but it's basically, what can you, if a requirement states that, for example, a work step must have an input, process steps and an output, then you can relatively easily construct a logical test by saying, okay, so you have you create a work step and you can now test, does that work step expressed as a function, it's like you can test whether it has an input or not, right? Whether there's a change to the input into an output, and whether that output is then you can say whether there is an output, irrespective of what the details of the output are. So based on this type of thinking, we are currently at the stage of finalizing a general structure, how we should write these. I think this, in the end, will be also really helpful for implementers, because they can basically just put some meat on the logical test bones by adding their then very specific tests. Again, those are non-normative statements, so it really doesn't require the test has to be exactly like this, right? This is just a guide. So I think we're close to that, and I think we will be able to, now that we have this clarity, be able to, not in short order, but in a reasonable order, aka time frame, I'll be able to complete the complete this task. We'll have to rewrite some of the testability statements that we already have, but it's not going to be thank you, ChatGPT. That is very helpful tool to write and write the first version, the 80% there version, and then tweak it to make it work. So you can, I got it down to about 5 odd minutes per requirement using Chat GPT or any other equivalent large language model tool. So we're working on that. The editors are working on that, and we'll now, with renewed effort, go through all those requirements and add, which unfortunately will add, decent volume to the actual length of the documents, but I think it will help overall. Yeah, so that's it. So we're still aiming for getting this done by the end of Q2, which aligns with what we need to, because the requirements are really not going to change, even though there's some bickering about how these are not really requirements. But anyway, the requirements are not well written. It's like, if you can write a logical test for it, should be good enough. Aligns well with the interoperability fest that we're planning for the end of the year. So I think we should be good on that front. So over and back to you.
Awesome. I'm actually going to pass it right back to you for TSC updates.
Yes, right. TSC updates. Well, so Mark already talked about the blog that was published. So we have, if you don't know, every TSC member has the responsibility of producing a blog during their tenure, the 1-year tenure, so that so we're filling up those slots with different points of view, which is because we have a decent variety on the of backgrounds on the TSC. We are actually getting very interesting views on like baseline and how it's useful for different types of roles, entities, people. I think that's awesome. Mark, great job. Jov is up next, talking about being a core dev or becoming a core dev, which I think is great. So all very much thanks to Mark, appreciation, and high five to Jov to taking on this work. We have published a request for proposal for the interoperability demonstration. It was like 2 weeks ago. So we are inviting the community to submit their proposals. In that, we're still working and finalizing the request for proposal for the baseline roadshow. We should be publishing that hopefully sometime next week, if we can get all the things done. So look out for that. We obviously need then also grant funding. So if any of you are eager and keen to either contribute in kind with your time and brain cells, or any software you want to showcase, or if you open up your purse strings and are willing to support any particular RFP with a grant, please do so. The instructions are actually in the RFP, and we can help you. Obviously, you can go on Slack and reach out to the TSC if you're not sure how to do that, and we will gladly help you figure out how to sponsor the RFP with your money. or cryptocurrency, we're not discriminatory against that either. So speaking of the interop, we have started and launched an interoperability working group, which meets Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central European time. So the goal there is everybody interested in the interoperability subjects and potentially wanting to reply to the RFP. We're working together to define the actual use case that is, and then also write down, hey, there are a whole bunch of these annoying interoperability requirements in the baseline standard. Like, how the heck are we going to implement those? Which is actually a great test to figure out whether they're actually really implementable, whether they make sense or not. And so we have great discussions going on there. We have an open Slack group on the baseline Slack called the Interop Working Group. So please join if you're interested. The more the merrier. We typically have like 5-6 people on those calls working together. There's also a document which is also pinned to the group, where with all the notes and where things currently stand, which brings me to the last point there, which is the use case that the group has settled on, which is something that is very common, happens across all industries, which is the synchronization of banking data between a company and a bank or a company's customer without ever exchanging that banking information, because you're not allowed to. So and we have interest from various sponsors to provide different types of systems on each side, actual enterprise systems, to make this demonstration as real as possible. So yeah, so that is both the update and obviously highlights also the focus roadshow and interop for the TSC this year. And back to you.
All right, thank you. That is the end of our formal agenda of General Assembly updates. I just want to open the floor and see, are there any other updates anyone wants to give, or anything you've been working on recently or learning about or stuck on? Ian, how's it going in the world of all the work that you and Jack are doing together?
Yeah, lots going on. It's been a busy past few months. We recently got back from ZK Summit, and I think we've mentioned for a while now, one of our ambitions was building ZK state channels. And, we've been talking about it the past year I think, and all it ended up taking is 2 sleepless nights in Portugal, and we got them built with Plonky 2, which was super exciting to get done. But we realized when we were there that not a lot of people are using Plonky 2 right now, and there's a lot of Halo 2, which we kind of dove into before, but there's a lot to digest there. So we're taking a look at that again, more so at accumulation and the KZG implementation, which we didn't really dive into yet. We actually just got done hopping off a call with Aztec this morning, and we're in talks right now to bring Halo 2 into Noir right now, which would be super exciting. So I think we mentioned before on a call, the way Noir works is they have an abstract representation called Acer. So you can take different proving systems and plug them into the back end. I think most people here are familiar with Gnark or Narc, however you pronounce it. So it sounds like that might be a go, but we're still talking to them right now. But yeah, no, that's kind of a short summary of what's been going on.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Ryan, I don't know if you're around. You aren't on camera, but how are things going in your world?
Oh, there's this is an exciting time. Oh, I gotta grow up a little bit here. Got a little short there. My camera keeps getting knocked around by this cord over here. But tons of exciting things going on around Provide. Folks may be familiar with Eco. That's been catching on really well. Sustainability is a really great way to engage with companies about their business transformation. Because what I always encourage folks to think about relative to baseline, relative to blockchain in general is, think about these enterprise customers. Think about what their business transformation goals are, because they are getting fire hosed with not only blockchain or baseline things, but AI things and just running their core business. So when you think about how to communicate, what their priorities are, sustainability is actually top. So lots of exciting things, still to announce or share in the future. But we're active with the interop discussion here as well. The Bankmaster Data synchronization. That's something that we've prototyped, with Shuttle successfully and submitted to hackathons and other events and circumstances. So we're excited to see that advance through interop, and have more discussions as well about how does that fit into more on-chain finance, right? Because once you have like these cryptographic assurances around correct payment address to send to a customer or vendor, right? Now you've really taken a step towards like true on-chain settlements, which I think should interest everyone here on this call in this space. Is like, hey, how do we move from an EDI centric payment rails to a more digital one, right? And speaking of EDI, that's we're harping on this message of like ZK EDI, right? Where it's not necessarily a rip and replace of EDI or IDOCs, but rather like how do you get that assurance outside the black box, right? So once you send this EDI document and doing more than just confirmations, but getting those assurances of yes, the purchase order or the sales order was created in precise exact way as we meant it to, right? Really tremendous potential there overall. So more news to come. We're going to do another Provide webinar here in May. We'll also be doing an event, in partnership with Zynergex, which is a partner of ours that's based in the Australia, New Zealand region. So they're very excited about Baseline as well, and getting that into the hands of more SAP users across the ANZ region. So that's all from me, and thanks for letting me have an update here.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for always joining and having good
Yep.
updates for us. Cool. So any other topics anyone wants to discuss? Anything crazy in the tech news happening?
It's Chat GPT all the way, all the time. And now a lot of them are starting to actually use generative AI within healthcare. And I'm going, whoa, will you guys pump the brakes on that for a minute? You don't need to be using generative AI for clinical diagnosis or medical decisions.
Oh, they've been doing that for years already, and that's wildly used. I mean, Watson was the first one, and then they turned out that did not work so well. But for certain things, it is significantly more advanced. In fact, there are a couple of research papers out that large language models actually can detect certain types of cancer significantly earlier based on blood tests than doctors can. It's just simply because of you just can compare a much larger data set much more quickly. So it's not like super magic. It's just that it's like Human being just has a limited amount of data that it can process and be retained at any point in time. That includes patterns. So
Yeah.
it's not surprising. However, every diagnosis by these type of large language models, not ChatGPT in particular, any large language models, needs to be, verified, right? So it's like it should be used as a diagnostic assistant, not as it's not there that you can basically delegate full responsibility for a diagnosis to those models. You will be able to very quickly, simply because this type of like pattern recognition, these models are much more suitable for than human beings. At least based on if you need a lot of data in order to be able to make accurate predictions, especially when it's a great tool for especially younger healthcare providers that haven't had decades of experience and have basically built up that pattern matching, those pattern matching capabilities.
Well, and I think they miss a lot of the tiny details and stuff because there are so many different sources of data that they're relied upon within the clinical setting. I mean, forget the research for a second, but just to submit a claim, just whoever is within the revenue cycle of the provider's office staff, they have to generally pull data from an average of 5 different systems to assemble a claim submission post-treatment to a healthcare payer. And so you just have all these different buckets holding different types of data, trying to get them all together, at least around a common data model.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
really
a given about like claims and stuff like that. Yes, I was just merely talking about diagnostics. But speaking of claims, it's like most health insurance providers are actually most claims are never seen by a human being. Nope. The percentage of claims that are reviewed by machine learning, every single claim is reviewed by machine learning algorithms. Yes. And I think over 80% are fully automatically adjudicated, including a lot of very questionable ones that are then, they're basically saying, we're just deny, and only unless people scream, and then come with a lawyer, will we do anything about. It's basically the same reasoning that the IRS had when they are audited primarily low income families.
Yeah, primary Medicare and Medicaid.
The same thing, right? Low income means you don't have the knowledge and the resources to properly defend yourself. Welcome to America. It's true.
And they're like effectively doubling the size of the IRS agents in the near future too.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, which is actually the right move, because you need about 100 to 1,000x more resources to do an audit on the people who should be audited compared to low income, right? I mean, the audits on like low income one person can do multiple ones. If you want to audit a billionaire, you need between 50 to 100 people.
Well, the billionaire is going to have 50 to 100 people in his own financial.
That's exactly right. That's exactly why you need that many resources. But in the end, the payout over years is significantly higher, because you can basically tell them, oh, by the way, we have now enough resources to audit you every year, and you will be audited every year. So stop doing your shit, which is much more effective way of deterrents for employing these type of schemes. Anyway, just saying that AI models are also utilized in fraud detection for taxes. You can easily tell, for example, based on the structure of numbers, not like literally. You can tell whether books are cooked based on what the individual numbers are.
Yeah, historical patterns, and you're doing a projection. This is what it's likely to be.
No, you don't even need that much sophistication. You can just tell if numbers are too round and they're this and that. There's a book that has been written about that. So it's like that is relatively easy to spot and based on forensic accounting practices. Anyway, irrespective of that, the problematic thing is that there is a lack of regulatory framework for applying AI models.
And even a lot of people, they can't get, really, there's a difference between AI and between artificial intelligence and machine learning. And everybody's like, what's the difference? And I'm like, well, if it's written in Python, it's machine learning. If it's written in PowerPoint, it's AI. But this chat GPT, other than, kids, hey, this will write my term papers for us. It's really interesting. I mean, it's almost scary.
Yeah, it's machine learning is typically one algorithm. Large language models employ on the order of a dozen different algorithms, right? Where you machine learning, you often do like just one, like random forest or something like that. But with large language models, you in fact have like about a dozen models that are layered on top of each other.
Well, and
which also makes it problematic if you're not really, because error propagation becomes much harder, obviously. So it basically becomes a black box.
Well, and the big thing is the output that you're going to get from AI ML, whether either one, is only as good as the input that you have. And the big problem that I see exists everywhere is you've got data science teams within even a large company saying, we don't have the entire data set. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. We have missing elements, and we need to, we can't run our engine until we get those. And so, and we didn't realize that we needed that to advance 3 months ago. So now we've got to spend another month and a half trying to find that additional missing data that they need. And it's kind of interesting. You're seeing some exchanges, or at least some ideas that are coming out going, hey, let's match these people together, those that are missing certain parts of the data set, because it's very uncommon that somebody has everything that they will need to have that high confidence output from the AI/ML.
And you can't share the data, right? So that's where ZK ML comes in. Again, it's a multi-party coordination in zero trust under zero knowledge that becomes necessary. So now we're talking ZK ML, ZK VM. Yep. Those are that becomes that's an active area of research and development, because it is crucial, right? So especially as you push things toward to the edge, and the more these models are being delegated to in terms of making decisions, veracity of how they were constructed becomes more and more important.
Well, and also how you source it. Was it sourced legally or ethically? I mean, was it public domain, or was it just, I mean, did you just scrape Reddit or forum?
Yeah, that the sourcing, and it's like debiasing data is
Right. This reminds me. This reminds me all of. You ever watched the show Person of Interest from long ago? Like that was a show all about. That was a show all about AI, and like the whole hook of the show was like at the beginning of every show, all they got was just like a name, right? They didn't get any other context about this person. It was just like, okay, you got to figure out what's going on with this person, right? Like didn't talk about everything else going on with this person, but the machine, this AI, was nudging them towards, okay, you got to figure out what's going on with this person at a given time. And I think that show was like weirdly prophetic because it kind of tied into like all these crazy things that could be like kind of guardrails for AI or like things AI could do for itself. Like towards the end of the show, it was like moving its own data center. Like that was crazy stuff. Fun show. Highly recommended by everyone on Baseline.
Yes. Or
and
just
later,
watch 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah. Yep.
1971, right? So it's
Might as
like
well-
it was,
Might as well get to Terminator. Skynet was basically an AI that became self-aware.
Yeah. I mean, that one's a bit more fatalistic. I think there's like I think there's a mix of different AIs that are of different capability levels, like a Bender from Futurama. I think we're gonna get a few of those out there, unfortunately.
yeah. Again, you will be interacting with agents. So the key information is, right, as you're starting to interact with different AI agents, right? What do the AI agents have to prove about themselves, right? It's like it's going to be because they're going to interact with humans, right, and with each other. The question is, how do you establish trust, right? How is that established? How can you prove things about yourself that makes me trust you, right? So that becomes really it as AI matures, it's going to be a trust coordination problem, right? What can they prove about themselves that is verifiable, such that you can trust them? Like when you show your passport, oh, okay, I now I trust you that you're really a U.S. citizen or a German citizen, and you have this name, and you were born then, and things like that.
Well, I mean, flip the question on its head too. It's like how will AI know what information it should trust, right? Because like it has to have a way of parsing through what's just garbage data or like training model data that's meant to throw it off, right? Because you see this discussed often is like if you give ChatGPT a bunch of garbage fake news, it's going to spew that right back to you, right? So it's not necessarily that AI is always correct. It's only as good as the training data that's there, right? So if you can have verified like axiomatic level data and like reporting that goes with the information that's cryptographically signed by certain parties, then you're onto something better, right? It's not going to be just kind of a garbage in, garbage out type of scenario with what information they give you.
You need a provenance of your data supply chain, right? As with pretty much everything, and that comes back to multi-party automation, under zero trust, in zero trust, and under zero knowledge, right? So again, you can't know, but you need to prove, and there is no trust, right? Trust needs to be reestablished every single time, right? Because you could have been compromised since the last time we interacted. Wait, that was just 100 milliseconds ago. I don't know. It's like, so what? right? So it's that's the continuous authentication, authorization, verification of provenance of data supply chains is going to be critical. Again, I think we talked about this. You can't, you can fake everything, and unless you can prove, right? It's like the you can come up with all kinds of like sorted things that have literally legal implications, significant legal implication, because the standard in a lot of court systems is just you get off if there's reasonable doubt. So and if you can, through fake information, fake proofs, generate reasonable doubt, no one can verify anything really, then your entire legal system is de facto imploding, because there's no way that you can not establish reasonable doubt. So it's like there is no way to dispel reasonable doubt.
The postmodern struggle of what is reality.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we're facing that right now, right? In more ways than one, and we just basically just started. Give it another 12 to 24 months. Right. So it's getting really, it's going to get really serious really fast. So again, question is, how can we establish multi-party zero trust under zero knowledge? It's going to be the defining question of how AI can be responsibly utilized. If you want to boil it down to, it's like society is very functioning. It's dependent on that multi-party zero trust under zero knowledge.
But you got to have the right approach.
That's correct. Now you just need to execute against that.
Yep.
And that's why we're doing the interop, right? That's why we're doing that. That's so fundamental. Like these are like many fundamental building blocks that are just simply missing in order to handle this, and we're building those.
Well, I think a really cool thing that I read this week, actually, there was a stablecoin proposal that went quickly into Congress for the financial services, and interop's actually one of their requirements, actually, right? To say like, hey, we know there's going to be all of these different networks in some manner, but we need to have some level of interoperability to have assurances across each one if you're going to use different things all over the place, right? So I think about interop. We think about interop in the context of just BPI instances, right? But what is a BPI instance? It could be two runtimes of like API frameworks, but it could also be different chains, right? It could be so we think of BPI interop between like BRI1, like BRI3, but reality, it's not only just that, but anywhere there's zero knowledge applied, right? Because we discussed that in depth of like, hey, a zero knowledge proof should always be verifiable in any context where you have the same work group, the same information, the same credentials involved, right? So I may have butchered some of that on the standards there, but I think the idea stays the same. Is like, hey, look, interop is actually an important thing across systems.
Yes, and not only interop, but compliant interop. When you talk about stable coins, right? So it's like if I send a stable coin from network A to network B, right? Not only are the validators that are facilitating that exchange need a money transmitter license, right? But you need to apply, for example, the travel rule, right? You need to apply OFAC list, right? It's like you just can't just like, and this must be done in zero knowledge because you are operating on public networks. Even if they're permissioned, they're going to be public, right? So how do you do that? So again, you need these zero knowledge proofs, these circuits, these it's like these zero knowledge ASICs basically everywhere, right? And not just general purpose, but specific, and they need to be verifiable on on each network, because the trust assumptions again vary between those networks. So every time you interact, you need to again establish trust. So again, zero trust under zero knowledge, right? Again, between multiple parties, right? Because because we're the multiple parties. Even if you sent yourself money, there's going to be the regulator and they're the validators. So there are multiple parties, and again, you need to establish trust. And I'll tell you, the regulators is just going to say like, no, I don't really care. It's like, you must do this, right? If not, I'll find you, I'll hunt you down, and I will make sure you end up in jail.
Well, I mean, on the other side too, like at a practical business operations level, I like in my SAP level view, I think of clearing payments. You want to know if the actual status of your payment or ones that you're receiving. Typically you work that through EDI, you work that through Swift. There's a really compelling way to apply baseline, in the context of Swift and invoicing and payments, B2B wise. So if we could ever find one of those guys, I think Chainlink was trying to do something with Swift a while ago with CCIP, but I think there's a missing piece of the puzzle there of like, you actually have to do some other assurances with payments regarding, what purchase order or invoices related to that's not captured by CCIP or something else. So that we need, they like, call me, Sergey. I have ideas.
Yeah, no, and we are, in the interop working group, right? In our use case, we established a very unique way how to prove that two data sets, in different systems are the same, provably the same,
Yep.
right? Verifiably the same. And it's that is actually without exchanging any data, right? So that is that's actually quite fascinating, because as Ryan, as you pointed out, like, part of payment runs in ERP system is sending all the PII of everybody over to the bank and says, "It's like, here you go."
Yeah, like that's the deep dark secret behind in B2B payments, and because it's not like as nice as Stripe or Cash App. What happens is businesses produce a file on a daily basis of all the vendors they pay, and they put it into one file that has the business name, their bank account numbers, what amounts they're being paid, and there's a lot of legacy access controls on that, right? To make sure that never falls in the right hands, but it's still there. and it's subject to being manipulated, because like when we sell this business case for interop working group around Bankmaster Data, we're talking about the scenario where accounts payable departments get phone calls or emails saying, hey, you should change this bank account number from 123 XYZ to this other thing. Well, that's a well-known tactic by social engineers and hackers to actually steal payments, right? Like every accounts payable department has a story or nightmare story of a payment that was stolen that way or was attempted to be stolen that way, right? so that's us kind of boosting the interop use case, actually, just as a business use case is really fascinating. We're incorporating that as like a product offering at Provide, but I mean, others would follow soon after that with there too as well.
Yeah, because
Awesome.
because you need two sides, right?
Yeah.
This is not only a producing side, but a consuming side that can understand it. So that's what's really really important. But we are past our time limit, right?
Yes, we are. But thank you for the very great conversation. This was a good General Assembly. We will see everyone next month, but we will also see you next week where we will host ZK Pass that focuses on 2 topics that are relevant to baseline of ZK and identity. So do a little reading up on them, and they'll walk us through what they do, and we'll identify any relevance for the baseline protocol next week. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, all.